Hi, welcome to another episode of Luncheonette with Laura Diaz. That's me, and I'm super excited today to have our guest, Mary Cagle. We're going to be talking to you today about a very, very hot topic in foster parent land, and that is transitions. We had requested you guys send us some questions about transitions, and we got some great feedback, and we're going to be talking to Mary about that shortly. But first, we have a few announcements I wanted to share with you. First of all, we just recently posted our webcast that was tax essentials for foster and adoptive parents. And hey guys, I know that this was another hot topic. We had one of our highest viewerships on our live webcast, and it's all tips about the adoption tax credit, deductions, all those things. So take a look. If you didn't see that, please take a look at it, and it's a great video. Also, on March the 5th, we have another live webcast coming up, and this is another topic that we've had a lot of requests for. It's on toilet training, and the title is Evidence-Based Strategies for Toilet Training and Addressing Common Toileting Problems. So I know that's going to be very, very helpful to you in toilet training your children if they have any special needs. Bedwetting issues are going to be discussed, so I hope you can join us live on March the 5th. Also, there is a Duffels for Kids Walk on May 18th, and it's going to be at Jungle Island in Miami. And this is something that if you're down there, you can participate in. They're also looking for sponsors. So go to the website for the Florida State Foster Adoptive Parent Association. We're going to post the link here, and you can get all the information on that as well. The National Foster Parent Association has a scholarship, and guys, I know this is the time where we're looking for money to send our kids off to college, and the cool thing about this is anybody who's a member of the association can apply for a scholarship for either their adopted, foster, or birth children. So the March 15th is the deadline. Take a look at that, and hopefully somebody here that watches this show will win a scholarship for one of their kids. Okay, QPI Florida. We are so excited. Put a lot of work into this to upgrade our website. So wanted to let you know in case you go to www.qpiflorida.com and you say, hey, where's that watch training button or request training? Because it's slightly moved. It's got an awesome new format that's kind of geared towards the QPI Florida, and then there's also a gateway. If you click on the button that says go to just-in-time training, it's going to take you right to our regular page, so we'll be there. And you can also type in www.jitfl.com, which is Just-in-Time Florida. So if you think of that, jitfl.com, and you'll go straight to the website the way it used to be. Okay, last but not least, I know I'm rushing because I'm excited to talk to you about transitions, but last but not least, certificates of participation. So I hope you noticed after our last luncheonette that at the bottom there was a little PDF that you can click on, and it's pre-formatted. It's already got the name, the title of the episode. You just need to type your name in, what you learned as a foster parent from this and how you're going to use it, and then you can print that document. If you have any issues with that, sometimes you have to save the document and then print it because some printers are different. If you have any issues, of course, you can always email us here and we'll walk you through that. So with that, I am going to introduce Mary Cagle, and we're going to have a really good conversation about transitioning. Hi, Mary.
Hey, Laura, how are you?
Doing great, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us. Will you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and this wonderful work you're doing to help foster parents in dealing with transitioning the children in their home?
Yes, thank you, Laura. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm Mary Cagle. I know I've met a lot of the foster parents, but certainly probably more in Miami than other places because that's where I'm located. I'm the Director of Children's Legal Services for the Department of Children and Families. We have about 260 lawyers across the state who handle the cases in court of the children who you have in your homes. So they are a resource to you. And recently we became very interested in the issue of transitions. And it came about really because I was talking with Carol Schofer. Going back even about 2 years ago, she had brought this issue to my attention because oftentimes when there's a court hearing on placement for the child, a decision can actually be made in court at that time that the child is going to move homes, either be reunified with a parent or perhaps move to a relative. And what happens after that court hearing can be extremely traumatic, not only for the child, but for the foster parents, for other children in their home, other foster children, their own children. And we really realized that we were creating trauma for all of the people involved at times when we moved children from one place to another without truly being sensitive to making that happen in a way that we would make it happen if the child belonged to us. So in conversations with Carol, again, going back about 2 years, we had talked about trying to use lawyers and children's legal services to draft a transition plan so that everybody would be involved, the court would be involved, and we could try and do this in a more trauma-informed way. Well, although some work was done and there was some awareness brought to the issue, going back about a month ago, 2 months ago, Carol and I sat down again and said, really, we haven't achieved what we really wanted to achieve. And so we really have to do something about this issue. So Carol and I talked about how we could take a group of foster parents, and Carol asked them whether or not they would come to the managing attorney quarterly meeting that I have with my staff. Bring together about 40 attorneys quarterly to really drive strategy on how we can be better advocates for children and families. So at the last quarterly meeting, Carol had a group of foster parents share with my lawyers the impact transitions have on their life, the children's life, and the lives of the other children in their homes. And it was incredibly impactful. And so the first thing we're going to do today is look at a piece of the clip that was made. We actually recorded the conversations that we had that day with the panel, and we want to show you a portion of that recording.
We went to court one morning, not expecting any kind of transition or move to happen, and the judge ordered our kids to be moved right away. And so, of course, my first question was, well, can we at least wait till after school? This was like 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. And we were told, no, you need to pick up the kids immediately from school, and we're going to go ahead and make that move. So, first I want you to remember, think about the trauma these kids have already experienced. They've already had loss in their lives, and in our home, I always try to let the kids know in the morning, listen, today's going to be a different day. You're not going to go to school all day. You have a doctor's appointment at 1 o'clock. I'm going to be picking you up at 12. We do this with every single child because of the experiences they've already had in their home. This day I wasn't going to be able to do that. I go to the school, and I won't forget the day that I see the children coming down the hallway with their friends, and of course the oldest says, why are you picking me up today? Why are you picking me up today? And of course I paused for a minute, and I'm like, what do I say to her? And I said, I'm actually taking you home today. And in the middle of the hallway, she starts screaming and crying. By the way, this was to a relative. In fact, I had told her, you're going with your grandparents today. Her little brother was next to her coming out of the side hallway with another friend, and he starts crying because she starts crying. The emotional impact was obviously the trauma, the crying, the not understanding why her life was being turned upside down again. Okay? So then we rush home because our house is actually a mile away from the courthouse. So of course we're rushing home. The 2 kids are crying in the back seat. And we're rushing around our house to try to get all their clothes and everything packed. Not taking the time to sit down and talk to them about what this transition was, where they were going, why it was important, why it should be a good thing. Instead we're worrying about packing. Our daughter was also at school that day. She didn't get to say goodbye. How many foster parents do you think would stick around for that? today actually I was dropping her off. She's in middle school now. This was a couple years ago, and I asked her what that transition was like for her. And she said, I didn't get to say goodbye. So I want you guys to think about that. How many foster parents would be willing to stick around when the kids in their home are affected? Not just us, because we're the adults, but the kids.
So you can imagine the impact these foster parents had on the attorneys as they listened to these stories.
You know, Mary, that actually echoed a couple of the questions that came in. They were almost word for word the same scenarios. The foster parents in these questions actually talked about a scenario where they had a child, we'll say, yanked from their home, how disrespected they felt, how traumatized they felt that child was, and how, and particularly how traumatizing it was to the other children in the home. So it's definitely a sentiment shared.
Yeah, it's and we have to do better. And I can tell you the lawyers, my managing attorneys, reacted to that panel of foster parents with asking, how can we do something about this? We have to stop talking about this. We have to bring awareness to this issue, and we have to bring about change. And so immediately, even at the meeting, Carol was there, and Gay was there, and we talked with the foster parents. Immediately, I had 3 lawyers who said, can we form a small team with Gay and Carol and some of the foster parents and really put an action plan together for how we're going to address this? And so they did that. And in the next couple of weeks, they worked together. And what we came up with was an idea that we want to put together a statewide training in every single circuit.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and in the conversations, what we realized was that since a lot of these issues come up in court, we really wanted to have judicial sponsorship of the trainings. And so what we want to do, and letters went out this week from Judge Esrig to the chief judges of every circuit, asking them to appoint a dependency judge in every circuit to spearhead a planning committee in every community to put together an awareness training around this issue. So that should be happening, in the next couple of months everywhere. And the people we want to bring together are case managers, lawyers, judges, foster parents, anybody who touches this issue, guardians, parents, attorneys, because we all play a role in this. And I think if we all understand the trauma this is creating to everyone that's impacted, I think the more awareness we have, the more we're going to be able to do something about this and really address this for kids and families.
I agree. Mary, I was thinking about the situation and having gone through several transitions in my own home, some better than others. I don't think there's been a situation that's ever happened where somebody didn't know in advance that the child was going to get moved, that there was a possible relative out there, that there was possibly a sibling in another foster home, that there was a imminent reunification. So I think there's a lot that can be done around us getting together at the table, meeting, and talking as a group about pre-planning this, how we can be proactive in planning out this transition. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think being proactive is really essential to addressing this issue. And one of the things that came out of the group working with Carol and the foster parents was a draft of a transition planning guide, right? Because a big part of this issue is not just the pre-planning weeks in advance, right? But planning what's going to happen on the actual day the child moves. And so Jennifer talked a little bit about that in the video, right? How she understands, some of the needs of the kids that are placed with her. And, even more so than other kids, they need to know what's coming, right? So
absolutely.
This guide that, and again, I say it's a draft because one of the things I'd like to have folks do in the local communities when they do their stakeholder meetings on this transition issue is look at this guide and tweak it to meet their needs and enhance it and make it what they want it to be, right? But if you look at it, one of the most important things on the guide is what are the child's thoughts about transition, right? So on the day that this move is going to take place, has somebody talked to the child about it? Getting their thoughts so they understand what's happening. And foster parents get that so much better than other people in the system. I think the rest of us struggle a little bit on some of the completely child-focused pieces. Foster parents do all that naturally. But if you look at the guide, it talks about, what's the input of the present caregivers, right? What are they telling the folks, who are going to go to court or the case managers about, what the needs are, what their needs are, what the child's needs are, what the needs are of the other children in their home? When is the child going to have a chance to physically say goodbye to everybody? Who's going to drive the child from one placement to another when the move takes place? Is the foster parent going to do that? Is the case manager going to do that? What would be the better way to do that? What would be the best way for the child to do that? And then you'll see the guide also talks about whether or not there are upcoming events for the child. Does he have a soccer game 2 days later? And how is he going to get to the soccer game? Because you sure don't want to have him miss it, right? Because it's something that's important to the child. So depending on the child's age, lots of conversation has to take place with the child and with the caregiver to really put together a plan of what is going to be the least traumatic for the child on the day the change of placement actually happens.
Right, and I think there's a lot to be said also about transitioning and what happens after that day. If this transition plan is going to carry forward into some type of post communications, once the child leaves, can they call the foster parents? Can they visit? Things like that, because I think that also really helps to reduce the trauma in the child. And I know we've got some evidence-based information on that you are going to share. And I think it's something that we really need to focus on. And it is all about the child, and that's why we're concerned about this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, more and more we're talking about co-parenting in Florida. And, if co-parenting is occurring and occurring effectively, a lot of those issues about what's going to happen in the days to come can naturally sort of take, place effectively, right? Because they know each other. Maybe they can go to the games together, the medical appointments. They can work together to ensure the smooth transition.
Yeah, I think, Mary, that works really well with a reunification where they have been co-parenting, but maybe I'm talking a little bit more of a foster parent to foster parent move, maybe to put siblings together, or maybe a relative placement that came up suddenly, that kind of a situation where they haven't had that opportunity to build a bond together and work together in a transition plan, in advance of that move.
Yeah, then the planning becomes just absolutely critical. It really does. I wanted to mention that another really important piece of this is really understanding the trauma. And when we had the foster parents come and present to our attorneys, the other thing we did that day was we showed a clip of Dr. Charlie Zena talking about attachment and the effect all of this has on children at all the various ages of the child. And so that's also a piece of information that exists that can be used by all the local communities when they do their stakeholder meetings on this issue of transitions to help people really understand, what's going on for the child. I was reading the other day a book that we've been sharing with folks on How Children Succeed by Paul Tuck. And he, transitions, they take place in so many different ways. Even the front end, removal by the protective investigator into care, is probably one of the most traumatic transitions for a child. But he talks a little bit about a young girl who was removed at age 10, much like the story Jennifer talked about, from school. Okay? And when she ages out of foster care, she sits in a therapist's office and explains to her therapist the impact that had, how it's so vivid today at the age 18, what happened to her when she was 10 years old and was somebody she didn't know showed up at her school, and she didn't go home to her dad. She went into care, right?
Oh,
and so
yeah.
she talks a little bit about being damaged, and the therapist says to her, well, what are you talking about? What does being damaged mean? And she talks about the physical things going on in her body as a result of what happened to her 8 years earlier. And she talks about how at 18 her hair is falling out, her body aches, her hands tremble. So we think about how, it makes sense to us that, later in life kids are depressed or, think about suicide, but we rarely think about the fact that there are physical changes to their body and their brains as a result of the trauma they suffer when we don't do this right. So I just can't emphasize enough how important I think this issue is, and, how important it is to really do some training around the state to bring awareness to this issue.
I couldn't agree with you more. And being a part of the Fostering Florida's Future recruitment committee for the state, I know it's a big retention issue, and we want foster parents out there to feel that we care about their feelings in this too. I mean, when the child gets moved and sometimes they don't feel that their thoughts or what they're saying is taken into consideration, I think it's hard on them as well. So I think the more we can do to work together as a team and make this better for the children, the families, it's going to have a positive impact on everybody.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And Jennifer says that so well in the video too.
She does, absolutely. Well, Mary, we've had a few questions come in, and if you have a minute now, I'd like to just kind of go into those and see how it ties into what we're talking about, okay?
Okay, sounds great.
All right, the first one, it kind of has some components of what we've been talking about, but it actually says, what is the current policy regarding transitions to facilitate sibling bonding? Should children be abruptly removed from a foster home where they are thriving in order to be placed with siblings? By abruptly, I mean notified in the afternoon and picked up that evening, never having met the new foster parent. So this happened in this foster parent's life. What's your feelings on that?
Okay, so one of the things I think is important for everybody to know is that we've been talking at the department a lot about how to embed this whole discussion of transitions into our operating procedures and rules. So is there current policy on this? Not really, but are we looking at how to embed this in policy? Yes, we are. So, of course, I think anybody knows, having listened to the discussion so far, abrupt transitions are completely and totally inappropriate and bad for children and everybody else involved. So that should never happen. And that's why we're going to do these stakeholder meetings, to bring awareness to all the different parties and try to change that horrific practice.
So the positive of putting the siblings together doesn't outweigh the negative of an abrupt transition. So it should still be a thoughtful, planned out happening.
Absolutely.
Right. I couldn't agree more. The second question I wanted to ask you says, what is the requirement and purpose for transitioning a child from a loving foster home to a non-relative placement? The writer says this foster home was the child's 5th placement. The goal was reunification with the biological mother who did not have a car or driver's license, and the non-relative placement was 60 miles away. So their question is more, I think, to the reasoning behind that decision in that transition. What's your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that are that all of this, every time a child moves, and all the decisions made about children and families have to be made case by case. It's really difficult to paint with a broad brush. Every child and family is different. So, I mean, on the face of what you tell me, it doesn't sound right at all. But I think, you have to really dig into what the other facts are. And I would have to know more about it to really, give you my opinion. And to that point, we never want to have a bad transition, and I know they're happening all of the time, right? That's why we're doing this project. So, I would like to give the foster parents out there my phone number so that, if something's happening, they can call me and they can bring that to my attention so I can circle back and figure out what's going on. And I'd also like to make sure all the foster parents have the numbers of the managing attorneys in their circuit for children's legal services and all their cell phone numbers, because it's my managing attorneys that are going to be helping to spearhead this in the local circuits, and they can also do problem solving with the foster parents when issues come up for them.
Okay, fantastic. We can post this right here on Luncheonette so everybody has that information and can make those contacts. Thank you so much. You're probably opening yourselves up to a lot of phone calls. So what about, would you like them to email you details? Would that maybe be a good way for them to give you specifics?
Sure, that's fine. I think the list of phone numbers has this managing attorney's email addresses on it too, so they'll have that.
Awesome. I always think that's helpful because then they can kind of set the stage with a little more, background to the problem. So, okay, well, another question I think that is good to kind of tie into this. It says, I'm very thankful for you hosting this upcoming session. I have been part of transitions as a foster parent and as a community partner. I'm very interested to hear what best practices are being applied as well as what is currently required. Also, how is child development factored into the transition planning, which I think, of course, we just went over a little bit of that. And what can be done if transition plan turns out to not be the best plan part of the way through the process? Are there stages of transition to ensure it's the best for the child?
Okay, so we talked a little bit about taking into account child development, and so I would encourage folks, as they take part in the planning and the community events, to use the Charlie Zena tape that explains attachment, and those pieces are very, very important. That's one of the most important pieces, I think, for people to understand, because if you understand it, I think it drives better practice.
And we're going to post that link to that video because it is in our QPI directory. So we're going to post it here so viewers can go right to it and watch that.
Okay. So the other thing I guess I would say in terms of stages of transitioning is, be a part of the process. Foster parents need to be a part of the team. If you don't feel like you are, call the CLS attorney that's handling the case, call the case manager. You need to be a part of the team. You're on the transition piece. You're critical to the planning, right? In every stage, you're the ones who know the issues, that are going to affect the child and the other people in your home. So for you to be a part of that planning process is critical, or it won't work at all. So be proactive. Make sure you bring the issues to the table. Like I said earlier, sometimes, I think often, it's the foster parents who are the person that's totally connected to the child. That's why even the Quality Parenting Initiative is so important, because I think it's driving this practice of putting you at the table. I've been having conversations with my lawyers, and a piece of this came out of that meeting, but so often the lawyers will call the case manager to be the witness to testify about the child to the judge. And really, we've been encouraging them to also call the foster parent, because the foster parent is the person who has the detailed knowledge of what's going on in that child's life.
Right. Who knows the child better than the person who's with them 24/7, right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, great. Well, one more question that came in is, what procedures are being put in place to assure proper transitions for our foster kids back to their parents or to other placements, which of course we've been talking about? And will the CBCs and the agencies they contract to be accountable if the procedure is not followed? Will corrective action reports be filed on these agencies?
That's a great question, because I think we need accountability for all the players in the system. Not just the CBCs, but for the lawyers, for the case managers, for the foster parents. We all need to be accountable for doing what's best for kids. So, there are processes in place to hold each of us accountable. I think that's really important, but I would go back to really stressing that at the end of the day, we all want to do the next right thing, or we wouldn't be doing this. So for all of us to be proactive, to be part of the team, and to ensure that the next right thing happens. That's our focus, and that's what we want to do.
Okay, Mary, well, we're about out of time for our interview today, and I just want to thank you so much for all the work you're doing and just sharing your time this morning to do this interview with me.
Okay, Laura, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. I love working with you guys. I love working with QPI. And you guys are doing great things out there. I want to close by just saying that we are so committed to this project, and one of the things we're going to do, and I think is happening now, is we put together a survey to go out to the foster parents statewide to answer questions about how the transitioning of children in and out of their homes is going now, to get a baseline of what's currently happening. Then we're going to roll out this project and this training across every circuit, and we plan to do another survey in 4 to 6 months. So I think that will give us some indication of whether or not we're making progress, which I think is really, really important, because at the end of the day, we have to get this right.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I'm hoping that you're going to see great results, positive results on those surveys. Okay, guys, well, that wraps up another episode of Luncheonette, and I just want to let you know that we have a great next show coming up. It is going to be dealing with runaways. This is a new topic we haven't really done too much on, and I know it's something that a lot of our foster parents have to deal with. So I hope you'll join us for our next episode. And also, don't forget that we've got the email address that you can send us your thoughts, your comments, questions, ideas for other topics that you want to see. Because remember, this show is for you, and we want to make sure we're helping you in your day-to-day journey as foster parents. So email us those questions or topics. Also, you can go to our Facebook page. We're posting the address right here on the screen, so you can also post them there. And thanks again for joining us, and have a wonderful week.